Coulombe?
Just great. Not the grandiloquent, the splendiferous, the exiled.
You're unsatisfied with great? Well, I think great is a step up from last time where you're credible, which you didn't seem to like credible at all. Even though it's hugely... You could do whatever you want if you're credible in the United States.
Well, that's true. That's true. You can be a credible witness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. Never mind. I'll accept it. I'm very excited. I made a brief return to the United States last weekend. Mm-hmm. I went to Boston and New Hampshire. I went to the SBC conference and emceed it. Stopped by the Wayside Inn, Longfellow's Wayside Inn in Sudbury, Massachusetts. So that was great. The weekend before, I was in Krakow, in Poland, and the day after tomorrow, I'm going to Zagreb, Croatia. So you see, I'm not in that island we call SoCal. Now, I hate to contrast my position with yours, but there you are, high atop the Tumbler House building, with a beautiful penthouse view, but it never changes. It's the same buildings all the time.
Do you want the building to fly over to Tokyo or something? I mean, what do you want from me, Charles?
That'd be exciting, wouldn't it? A flying skyscraper. I can see it now. That'd be a movie, actually. But something out of Star Wars. But no, other than that, flunked a geometry test today, I'm pretty sure. That's the one.
What?
The one subject I was never any good at it in high school. I'm no good at it now. So that's not very pleasing. Other than that, school's going well. I mean, it's a great place. And of course the liturgies here come in no less than 4 rites. 1, 2, 3, 4.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
Well, you've got Latin Tridentine, you've got Latin Novus Ordo, you've got Byzantine, and you've got Syro-Malabar.
What?
It's from India.
Sounds like a Snickers bar. So what? Say that again?
Syro-Malabar, from the Malabar coast of India.
Wow. How's that one?
The Qurbana stretches in Syria and Malayalam or something. Anyway, it's a fascinating rite. I've seen it before, but as you can see, we have a great variety of people studying here. So that includes the clergy who study. There are 4 residential buildings, one for priests and religious, one for married couples, that's the one I'm in, one for unmarried lads, and the other for unmarried lasses. And these 4 go on a central plaza, and the castle, the Schloss, which is, I like to call it, theology's answer to Hogwarts.
Okay. Wow.
But I'm very much enjoying myself. But I do have news for you.
Okay.
You remember the downstairs studio where we spent so much time, you and I, for 2.5 years?
Ah, yes.
You live?
Yes.
Better make sure it gets dusted.
Dusted? Why?
I'll be home for Christmas.
Really?
You can count on me. It's true. I'll be coming home Friday the 21st of December, and I'll come back here on January the 17th. So we might be able to fit in 1 or 2 broadcasts if you're up to it.
Fantastic. That sounds great. Yeah, I'm interested. I think the audience will be excited to hear that.
And I'm looking forward to returning to the commissary. It won't be the same as the food is here. Venison, wild boar, boiled beef.
You jump forward to Christmas. What about Halloween, Charles? You excited about Halloween? Anything going on?
Well, I would be excited about Halloween, except I'm not going to be over there. And, in Europe, Halloween is kind of an American import, the way it's done. I'll actually be in England for Halloween. I'm going to Ireland first, and then I'll be giving a lecture on Halloween customs, I'll have you know. for the Salins Literary Society in beautiful Salins, Ireland, which is a suburb of Dublin. And I'll be doing that on the 28th, which is a Sunday. And then on All Saints' Day, on Halloween itself, a birthday. Believe it or not, a friend of mine was Halloween. He's with me for never going to his birthday party. Now I'm doing it. But the next day I'll be speaking at Cambridge University about the genealogy, as it were, of the counter-revolution.
Wow.
So that'll be fun, and then I come back here on the 3rd.
Okay, great.
But as for Halloween, it is getting to be that time, the October country.
So is there trick or treating in Austria or in England?
No, nothing like that. Well, in England, there's a few people who started doing it. You will see here, though, jack-o'-lanterns now, which is American influence. They never had them before.
Well, but it makes sense. What you told me, the Irish did like turnips or something? Or
yeah, radishes? They did turnips.
Yeah.
Radishes.
Something like that.
Hollowed out radishes. Well, hollowed out turnips not much better. I don't know how they managed it. But hollowed out radishes, little tiny. Yeah, I can see that. No, carrots. Gosh. Anyway.
Wouldn't that be kind of a weird experience? Because you said, like, some trick-or-treaters, but not really. So then, as a trick-or-treater, isn't that kind of like a scary experience? Like, you don't know where to go then, do you? I mean, like...
No, you wouldn't. I mean, I suppose... I don't know how they work it. I'm sure I'll know a lot more after I've been there at that time. I'll find out. I'll do a special report the next time we convene on trick-or-treating abroad. But what they do, however, in Catholic Europe, as in Latin America, All Saints' Day, we'll see, because it's still kind of an eerie time. It's just expressed rather differently. So the night of All Saints' Day, as in Latin America, as in Louisiana, you'll start seeing candles placed in the cemeteries. People go en masse. And then, of course, prayers to the dead that start on All Saints' Eve with the Vespers for the dead. In a lot of different places, they do things like setting out food for the deceased family members and so on. And there are ghost stories here and there.
Yeah.
In Austria, it seems like just about every castle has a white lady or a green lady or a red lady or some lady in some color who appears at different times. She's always the wife or daughter of somebody who had a bad day.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that motif occurs?
Well, I suppose because castles, by their nature, were places where all sorts of dramatic events occurred. And don't forget, people had a much more elevated sense of personal and familial honor than we do. So there were all sorts of honor killings and so forth.
No, well, I mean, I guess... Okay, because like in Sean Leslie's Ghost Book, perfect time to read it.
Oh yes.
You see motifs. You see perhaps sacrament-seeking ghosts. Let me just explain. To get to my point. That certain ghosts, like there's this story of this, I guess, a rectory being haunted, and these priests were encountering it. And finally, it's like they find this box under the bed where it's a list of masses, and a list of masses been paid for, and
never said.
But never said. And so then the priest said it, haunting goes away. So it's like God allowed this person to sort of help the priests out, figure it out for the sake of his own soul. So, but that's a recurring motif, and it would make sense that would be a recurring motif. For God to sort of,
It does, and as I suppose the haunting ladies must have something similar going on. But I couldn't begin to tell you what it is.
Oh, okay.
So other than that, I'm loving the food. As I say, it's not quite up to Tumbler House Commissariat standards, but it manages. And I'm, let's see, what else? There's something else I was going to say, but I forgot what it was. So anyway, here we are. I'm still alive, so are you, despite your many new responsibilities and despite mine. So.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to get used to the food, too. I'm kind of bored with champagne and caviar, but, I make do. So.
It is. What have we got in the way of questions? I'm sure we have some.
First, a little bit from me. We're here today because of all the generous people who have become patrons of Tumbler House. We reached our $250 goal on Patreon. So now we reached the level where we'll be doing this show once a month, in addition to, I guess, as you mentioned, the Christmas shows. If we get to another $250, we'll be doing it twice a month. Also, you'll notice Charles's fancy new headset that was made possible by donations and through Super Chat and Patreon. And the audio quality is much better. We get to hear your beautiful voice. Thank you, thank you so much, everyone. We literally cannot do this without you guys. And I just wanted to add, I'm adding a lot more exclusive benefits for patrons. Right now, depending on your level, you get preference on questions submitted, early access to videos instead of waiting for when we record videos, your personal discount code for tumblerhouse.com, 10% off, and we're going to be coming out with a lot of cool merchandise pretty soon. It's a work in progress, basically.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And depending upon which level you're at, motor pool, secretarial pool, etc., be assured that your real-world equivalents at the Tumbler House building will bless you for it.
There we go. Also, for everyone in the chat, send in your questions. Donations are much appreciated. I don't know if Charles is interested in doing another 2.5-hour episode. So for the sake of, it looks like not. But, if we get a lot of questions, I'm going to have to just resort to questions that come with donations just so that we don't have like a 5-hour episode. And we'll ask a bunch of questions at the end of the show. Let's get started.
All right.
Let's, I like to start the show with the news items of the month. So I guess the first news item of the month. Yeah, I know. They're always so fun, aren't they?
Yeah. Good times will be had by all.
Yeah. So the first news item is obviously Pope Paul VI's canonization, which a lot of traditionalists are frustrated over. What are your thoughts, Charles?
Well, firstly, I understand the frustrations completely. I lived through Paul VI. There should be a T-shirt. I lived through Paul VI, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
Wow, so somebody should really do that. Somebody should really do that.
I lived through Paul VI, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt. And to be honest with you, on the one hand, I understand the pain. I share it. The man, as a pope, was a failure. He ruined things. I mean, there's just no way around that. But it's all on one side. On the other side, we have to remember that he found a line in the sand that he couldn't go past, and that turned out to be contraception. He gave us Humanae Vitae, which was a very prophetic document, and it destroyed him. It really ruined him. I remember that, too. And, of course, after that was when he began saying things that were a little bit more realistic, like of the smoke of Satan in the church. He didn't do anything to repair the damage he and his cohorts had done, but I suppose, if nothing else, his cohorts would not have cooperated with him in repairing what they'd done. In truth, assuming that I suppose that he got there because of the misery he endured the last decade of his pontificate. You have to remember that popes are not, when popes are canonized, that does not necessarily, by any means, endorse what they did in their pontificate. It can, I'm not saying it can't, but if we look at Pope St. Celestine V, after whose abdication Pope Benedict XVI modeled his, he was an utter failure as a pope. That's why he abdicated. It was terrible. was awful. He knew it. So he got out of Dodge. What he was made not his failed papacy, but his personal sanctity. Now, having said that, will I ever like Pope Paul VI, humanly speaking? Probably not. I wish I could say that this changes everything I've ever felt about the man. Probably if I had lived under Celestine V's short pontificate, I would not have had a high regard for him. Okay. Probably, this canonization at a particular time for partly political reasons. But that does not get around the miracles that occurred. And that's the basis upon which someone is canonized. It's certainly true that someone's canonization may be pushed forward or held back for political reasons. That's true. Absolutely. But, there's a big but, you're still stuck with the miracles. The person is in heaven. But having said that, people who have pushed for his canonization, Paul VI, I mean, if they really want to honor him, they should, A, really push Humanae Vitae. We can expect to see from Pope Francis, if he really wants to honor his predecessor, an encyclical, sort of a quinquagesimo anno, honoring Humanae Vitae, the way Pius XI honored Leo XIII's Rerum Novarum with his own equally rip-roaring quadragesimo anno. Francis begin dressing like Pope Paul VI, and no doubt he will return to the pontifical we, to avoid emphasizing himself or his own personality. At least if he doesn't do all those things, people will question his sincerity. I won't, of course. I never question anyone's sincerity. I believe everyone's sincere.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will.
I can understand everyone's emotional reaction. I think there are two reasons for it. One is I've seen people share on Facebook sort of a list of popes of the past 500 years.
Yep.
And in the 400 years before Vatican II, there have been two popes that have become saints.
Yep.
And then after Vatican II, it's, what is it? We're up to 3 now. And then I think John Paul I is venerable, I think.
I don't know. Pius XII is venerable, but I don't think we'll see him canonized in this pontificate.
Yeah, so, people say they're trying to canonize the council. What do you think about that?
I think that's probably true. But I repeat, you don't make miracles out of nothing.
Okay. And now the other thing I think, because there are sort of two aspects of saints. One, obviously if we're saying this person is infallibly in heaven, but then there's sort of this other expectation that we have from saints where they are role models. They're exemplary. We try to mimic them. We try to mimic Saint Francis's charity. We try to stand up for the faith like the martyrs. But most of us, all we know about Paul VI is, sort of Humanae Vitae, as you said, and then sort of his association with the Novus Ordo. So it's kind of difficult for us. So it's like, how do we model ourselves after Paul VI? I mean, what were the qualities, to look at there?
I would say that having committed himself to a horrific course which brought the church into terrible peril, he nevertheless he came to a point beyond which he could not go. And he drew the line in the sand, and despite losing his reputation, I mean, most of my hearers are too young to remember what it was like when Humanae Vitae was released. The whole provinces, like the Belgians and the Canadians, came out against it. I mean, this was a terrible, terrible time to be Paul VI.
Yeah.
So is the lesson to be learned from his life? It's that no matter how much you may screw things up, if once you get your head on right, stick to it.
Okay.
That's a cold comfort thing, I'm afraid. But, I mean, look at St. Augustine, who's my confirmation saint. He led a horribly scandalous life. Mm-hmm. If all you knew about him were his confessions, you'd think, my God, what's a man like that doing as a saint? Same with St. Norbert, the founder of the Norbertines. But those men were not to their scandalous youths, but for their repentance. Paul VI never, so far as we can tell, repented of what he did to the church before Humanae Vitae. But going along with birth control would have been in keeping with everything he had done at that point. And the fact that he suddenly changed horses in midstream against everyone's expectation. So we got to remember, he had appointed a lay committee to look into birth control. The idea being, well, these are lay people and it concerns them. They found in favor of the church coming out for birth control.
Wow.
Now, it was a stupid idea to do that in the first place, and it set himself up for a fall. But nevertheless, he went against the findings of his own committee and opened himself up for ridicule and much worse as a result.
You know, I'd pay $100 to know specifically and concretely what Pope Paul VI meant when he said the smoke of Satan. I'd love to know what he was referencing.
Keep that in mind if you go to heaven afterwards and find out.
I'd love to ask him. I'd love to ask him that.
I'd like to ask Adam a few things.
What would you ask Adam? What would you ask him? What were you thinking?
Yeah, really? Really?
Really?
Was there ever any chick ever born who was worth this? Honestly?
Whoa.
Honestly?
Whoa.
Anyway.
Okay, let's see here in this list of...
And I mean, I gotta tell you though, to be fair to our father Adam, you know how I can tell I'm his descendant?
How?
It was the woman you gave me. 2 cop-outs in one sentence.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I got you.
It was her, it was you. Somehow I was like, I don't know, I was just a victim.
Oh,
if it had been for you and she, I would have been all right.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Okay, yeah, the Russian Orthodox Church on Monday said it's breaking ties with the Constantinople Patriarchate over its decision to grant independence to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which Moscow does not recognize. Now, somebody asked this in a previous off the menu in last January. You tackled this question, and it was like, and somebody asked, Charles, is this going to happen? And you actually said no, and now
I was wrong.
Now all these people are like, oh, it happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, for all of you who noted that I was wrong, here's the news: I was wrong.
But, I think it's mainly Orthodox people, and video's getting a ton of hits, but I think it's mainly Orthodox people watching the video, based on the nature of their comments. Let's read some of their comments now, shall we?
Joy.
I'm going to read some of their comments, because...
it's not enough I flunked geometry, I have to have my gift of prophecy shown to be a fraud as well. Fine.
Okay, Miro Mark says, who is this intellectual idiot? He has no idea what he is talking about. Only uneducated can believe this guy. Those that know the history and real orthodoxy can only laugh at the talking of this stupid man. Gosh. Okay,
I love you too, oh charitable brother in Christ.
Yeah,
what else we got?
Absolutely. Someone with an unpronounceable name, I'm not going to even try. Who is this English accent that is making crazy gestures? He is rumbling about the things that he doesn't know, and he is glorifying Roman Church. Okay, Georgie Preskov says, This man does not know anything about orthodoxy. It's fun to watch Western philosophers and historians talk about Eastern Europe. And I've saved the best for last with Dan DiLorenzo. This man should spend more time reading and less time eating. His mouth moves more than his mind and body. Wow. I wonder if he'd say the same thing about G.K. Chesterton. What if you
I don't
say...
know, but what I would like, first and foremost, is for the four gentlemen to be stuck in front of a camera and exposed to the entire world to see. Remember, when you're sitting there in front of the internet in your underwear eating weird canned fish, people can't see you, alas. Anyway, you know, firstly, my prophetic powers were completely wrong. Which doesn't speak well of Orthodox, sadly. I thought cooler heads would prevail, and I suppose the four were right. They couldn't control themselves, could they? I was wrong. I had believed that the Patriarch Kirill, who, in a very moving interview with Der Spiegel, had talked about the separation between East and West and likened it to a divorce, and said very movingly that, like a divorce, it was caused by sin on both sides, and that until both sides realized that they needed each other and came to love one another, that the schism would not end.
Yeah.
I agreed 100% with Patriarch Kirill, and I do wish that he had remembered his own words.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, the argument can also be made that the Patriarch of Constantinople had no right to intervene in Ukraine, since in 1686 his predecessor basically turned it over to Moscow. Constantinople would argue, however, that that was only because Ukraine was at that time occupied by the Tsar. And it goes back and forth, back and forth. For those Catholics and Orthodox both who aren't quick to make insulting comments, and oh, how I wish I could see you at home, then you'd get some really insulting comments, I promise. I could generate them. Wouldn't it be nicer if our higher clergy would just stop?
Yeah.
Just shut up. Just not pursue their own agenda and concentrate on the salvation of souls. Wouldn't that be fun? However, instead, because they are fallen creatures, not unlike their flocks, instead, well, as I've said before, in the West, authority ate up tradition. So, Pope, who was almost the Supreme Court in the United States, able to invent reality at his own will. And in the East, we have hierarchs who allow politics to dictate, temporal politics to dictate religious issues. Interesting.
Yeah.
There in the East, tradition has eaten up authority. And no hierarchy, officially, really speaking, in the East.
Yeah.
So, all I can say about all of it is that I don't know that Christ, with his prayer that all would be one, would smile very well on any of these people.
Yeah.
I don't know that he would look at Amoris Laetitia with his prayer that we be perfect as his heavenly Father be perfect, with kindly eyes. And I don't know that he would look at this latest action between Rome and Constantinople with kindly eyes. I don't see in any of this any kind of a desire for the salvation of souls.
Well, I mean...
What we do have, however, is St. John Chrysostom's assurance clergy go to heaven. So that's something to meditate on, I guess.
What was that? I'm sorry, my internet connection's a little wonky. I didn't. That St. John Chrysostom said what?
That most clergy went to hell.
I see.
I suppose. I don't. You know, we in the West can ignore him because he was an Eastern hierarchy.
Well, you know, my thing that I don't understand is, to me, you don't even need salvation of souls as a motivation. If you're just results oriented, and I mean, you can see that what we're doing isn't working in a catastrophic way. And if you like money, you want results, which means you want people to keep their faith. I mean, the Catholic school I went to, the grade school I went to, is now closed down. The high school, the all boys high school I went to, is now co-ed because not enough, people. And it's going to continue to go this direction until we realize, oh yeah, we're actually factories for fallen away Catholics.
Well, that's true.
But people aren't. I mean, there's just this blindness to like, okay, how do we get this right? Like, they're not even interested. The Facebook thing that I shared, the item was, because I can tell they like money because they're examining the qualifications of parents homeschooling their children, and I can tell you what that is right there. That's like, oh, we can't have people homeschooling because then money's going out the window because people are going to homeschool and not send their kids to our schools so that we can teach them to lose their faith. Oh, we can't have that. We need money.
I know. And, of course, similarly, as with the Cardinal McCarrick issue, Uncle Ted, as those of us who are fond of him like to call him, it's all crazy. It's all hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, except if they're in a position to smack you around, in which case suddenly they get real authoritative.
Yeah.
Again, as has happened before in history, and no doubt will happen again, we are seemingly in a perfect storm of church and state. What can I tell you? Pleasant to be alive right now, but let me point something else out, and that is we're not being arrested or imprisoned. One of my little trips was to Auschwitz when I went to Krakow.
Uh-huh.
And I got to see where St. Maximilian Mary Kolbe died. We're not doing that at the moment. So things could be a lot worse, ladies and gentlemen. And the other thing to bear in mind is that even though the clergy are annoying, and that's true in East and West, we still have the sacraments. We can get out of them. They're still able to do that much. And in the Catholic Church, I can't speak for churches, but in the Catholic Church, and it's allied Eastern churches, Ukrainians and Maronites and so forth, the younger clergy are far better than the people in charge. And we can only suppose that with time, the current generation of creatures will pass.
Yeah. The one thing, because, this is one of the things, honestly, the reaction against, the situation in church is largely why I am who I am right now. But it's a sensitive spot for me, too. It gets so frustrated so easily. So the one thing I try to do to temper that is I try to be grateful that I've escaped the trap. There was a time where, you fall victim to, the laxity, the presumption, lukewarmness. And so I'm grateful that, at least for now, I've escaped that. And that these people, these clergymen, they can't mess with me anymore. Like,
no.
I'm out of their reach. And for everyone in chat, all the faithful Catholics, I recommend that feeling of gratitude for your gift of faith. That you're not victim to this anymore. You're above this. You're not at risk.
And I would urge everyone out there who feel ready to go mental about what's been happening to find the nearest shrine, or failing that, the nearest adoration chapel, and spend a little bit of time there.
Yeah.
Just get away from it all. You and either the object of veneration or our Lord, or even if all that fails, just go to any church you like and go to a tabernacle and just get away. Mm-hmm. Use the rosary. Meditate on your scapular. Or go online and look at some of the devotional sites. I mean, look at, if you will, well, there are two of them actually I can recommend. One is realpresence.org, I think it's called, or .com. and the other is believe it or not, the Guard of Honor of the Sacred Heart. Go find things like that. Spend a bit of each day reading something spiritual but not polemical.
Right. See, yeah, that's a big challenge for everyone, you, me, and everyone with a trad impulse. We're trads, we have our faith because we have a great instinct in recognizing what is bad. Like, okay, that's bad, that's bad. That's why we're still practicing Catholics. But there's another side where we need to continue to recognize what is good and be grateful for having what is good. I think the trad impulse is sort of deficient in this area, and so we sort of always, I feel, we need to exercise that muscle more.
Yeah, I agree. We've got these forthcoming feasts coming up. Hallowmas, Halloween, All Saints and All. Celebrate them.
Yeah.
Throw yourself into Advent. St. Martin's Day is coming up on November 11th, and with it, this horrible, the 100th anniversary of the end of that horrible Great War. And again, we're not living through that kind of nonsense. That we should for that. You should explore your neighborhood. Find all the historic houses and public gardens and stuff in your own locale. Look at what's beautiful. Get away from, well, not until we're finished with the broadcast, of course, but get away from the internet for a bit.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to turn sour. Read some classical literature, Washington Irving or Hawthorne or Edgar Allan Poe or something. Shakespeare, Cervantes. One of the things that I have enjoyed about being here is plowing into Homer in a way I've never done before. And into the what they call the pre-Socratic philosophers. It's good to get your brains away from the modern moment. Because this, one thing I've learned at the grand old age of 57, even though I'm a geometry and prophecy reject, and don't, despite all that, I know that this moment passes very quickly. Because so many moments I've already lived through have passed away so quickly.
Yeah.
I got here at the end of August, and it's already mid-October.
Yeah.
Time passes quickly, ladies and gentlemen. And one way to avoid getting caught up into it is to focus on what's permanent. Very important. Anyway, what are the questions we got? I hope they're not accompanied with so many insults this time.
Yeah, no.
I have big mouth and don't know how to speak English, but I try right anyway.
I almost was gonna have you read the comments because I thought you might enjoy doing your Russian accent.
Well, if I do something, I would know something, but I don't, so it's okay. No, I tell you, it's not even a Russian accent; it's a moron accent.
Oh, okay.
I gotta tell. What the thing that really makes these with Constantinople so frustrating to me is that I love Russia. And I love Constantinople. Yeah. I told an Orthodox friend of mine today online, I said, I love the old Rome, I love the new Rome, and I love the third Rome. And, I could say, schismatics know nothing. That's why they always screw themselves over. But unfortunately, it's just not in me.
Yeah.
And it would be an easy, cheap shot. To which the easy, cheap response would be, "Oh, you're like your Pope, who's so full of beauty and perfection." But which, by the way, if I made the first cheap shot, it would deserve the second cheap shot.
Right?
Just so you know.
That's true.
Cheap shots, ladies and gentlemen, are not really sporting unless you open yourself up to a response. That's the problem with the internet. You could drop your little bomb.
And then block the person.
Yeah, but there's no chance of me, You're fat. Well, I may be fat, but I'm not wearing that would-be Burt Reynolds mustache. Ha 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 ha. Whatever. What do you learn? It's easy to focus on appearance.
Yeah.
I know. I've spent a lifetime building mine up. Oh, sorry, that came out wrong. Actually, I've lost a ton of weight since I've been here.
Well, you said that before, or maybe off the show. You say you do so much walking in Austria that it just happens.
It does. I certainly haven't done it for the sake of the show, but my poor trousers are getting harder and harder to put on. I'm going to cut another notch in my belt. It's annoying. Okay. Anyway, what else we got?
One more fun news item.
Oh, joy.
The Youth Synod.
Oh, the Fox in the Hen House Synod. Woo!
Yeah,
Fox in the Hen House, shoe fly shoe, Fox in the Hen House.
I'm going to read a tweet from Raymond Arroyo, and then I'm going to read a tweet from you, Charles.
Okay.
To sort of characterize this thing. Raymond Arroyo says, "So let me try to understand. The Synod is listening to the uninformed opinions of non-Christian youth, in quotes, non-Christian youth, so that Catholic leaders can consider adjusting teaching and practice? What other communion attempts such a thing? Do Muslims invite bishops in to help rewrite their teaching?" And then you tweeted, not in response to Raymond, but just independently, your comment on the Synod. "Given some of the personnel running it, the youth get-together in Rome may well merit the title of, quote, Fox in the Hen House Synod." Well,
I mean, when you put people in charge who are known for having a taste in young men, with a whole bunch of young men.
Gosh, man.
I mean, I don't know what to call it. You know, the immortal words of somebody or other, there's a whole lot of loving going on. I don't know. I don't know. Fox in the Hen House, shoe fly shoe, Fox in the Hen House.
You know, no one else has thought of that. Like, you know, given the current scandals, like, maybe this isn't the best idea, you know? Maybe.
Well, no, Archbishop Chaput of Philadelphia thought that maybe this was not maybe setting the wrong signal.
Did he really say that?
You know, yeah, he did.
Wow.
It's a pity. It's a pity Archbishop Uncle Ted McCarra couldn't have been there.
Oh yeah, what a shame. I think he would have loved
it. Icing on the cake, so to speak. No, that would have been fun. No, well, see, part of the problem with the Synod too is that they got rid of the rules. Pope Francis abolished the rules governing synods. Because remember, the last two synods of bishops didn't go the way he wanted them to. So he abolished the rules, but he didn't bother putting any new ones. So canonically, this thing doesn't, as I also tweeted, this thing means no more in the life of the church in terms of authority than a meeting of the Junior League. You know, a bunch of nice ladies getting together, deciding how to help charity. I mean, I'm all for them doing it, don't get me wrong. I fully support the Junior League. I'm not against them. All right? I want to make that clear. Any of you WASP dowagers out there thinking I'm coming out against the Junior League, no, ma'am. I'm entirely in favor of the Junior League and all its works. But even though I am, I have to admit that as far as the Catholic Church is concerned, the work of the Junior League has no authority.
Yeah.
So similarly, this gathering has no authority. It doesn't mean anything. Except the Fox in the Hen House, shoe fly shoe. Well, anyway. No, I think that it certainly, it's kind of like a fashion show for the bizarre. All sorts of weird ideas paraded around. I don't know what the Archbishop of Bologna was talking about. He was on about how for young people, the church wouldn't be an obsolescent, legalistic thing that's difficult to reach, but a logic of communion or something. I mean,
I saw that. I saw your post on Facebook, and I thought, I don't even understand that quote. So you're talking about logic. I don't even know what you're saying, sir.
No, I don't know either. But my comment on it was that whatever he's on, I want some.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously he's on. If it's on a high of some kind, I can't believe it's natural. So, as I say, if he's sharing, I'm in.
Somebody on chat asked, what's the Junior League?
The Junior League is an organization of well-to-do ladies, usually younger, in well-to-do neighborhoods who do worthy charitable things for their local community. That's the Junior League. And of course, if you live in the sort of place that doesn't have a Junior League, well, I'm sure you could be forgiven.
Okay.
There's a Junior League in Pasadena. There's a Junior League in San Marino. I do not believe there's a Junior League in Boyle Heights.
No, I would guess not.
No, probably not.
Okay. All right, let's get on to submitted questions by people. Not during chat yet. We haven't gotten there, but they submitted this is kind of from our massive queue that we've accrued over the past year or two. John says, in my Native American classes, the professors keep bringing up the Doctrine of Discovery. I've argued with the professors about this quite a few times, although I didn't fully understand it. Could you explain the Doctrine of Discovery? And is it legit Catholic teaching, or was it just a bad pope who created it?
No, the Doctrine of Discovery is the idea that when heretofore undiscovered lands are discovered, in fact, the Christian monarchs of the Christian countries that discover them have an obligation to evangelize the inhabitants thereof. With that obligation, of course, comes the privilege of running it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that might seem difficult to us moderns, but first you've got to bear in mind that the Native Americans themselves practiced a sort of Doctrine of Discovery. It was called conquest. You see, people have this idea that pre-Columbian America was this sort of Garden of Eden where the natives rambled around in touch with nature and each other, and all was joy, and all was peace and love. And they were there with the animals, and Bambi's great-great-great-great-grandmother never had to worry about anything. And ecologically, it was all wonderful, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, wasn't it like that?
No, it wasn't. It was, in fact, not unlike the rest of the world in any period in ancient history. Empires rose and fell. There was terrible cruelty. Nomadic tribes were particularly nasty to settled nations, and settled nations were really nasty to nomadic tribes when they could get their hands on them. Some of the biggest archaeological sites in North America, pre-Columbian, are battle sites, and the stories they tell are not pretty. As far as the ecology stuff goes, you know that until the Europeans came, the Indians did not have horses.
Really?
So where do you think the horses came from? Flowers?
I thought their horses were sort of like buffalo, sort of like wild on the plains.
Only when they escaped from the Spanish. Until the Spanish came,
there were no natural horses on the entire continent of North America to be had?
Not even unnatural ones.
Not even... Wow.
Nope, no unicorns, no Pegasi. There were no horses at all. They came with the Europeans. So I'm sure you're wondering, well, gee willikers, that being the case, how did the Plains Indians live?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't live the way you think of. They lived in the river valleys, in the basins, in sort of mud lodges. They did go hunting buffalo.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did they hunt buffalo? I mean, Dances with Wolves. They used horses.
They did, which was a much more ecologically friendly and responsible method of hunting buffalo than the way they hunted them before they had horses.
Well,
they would stampede them. They stampeded them off cliffs. That's how they did it.
Wow, the dark underbelly of... That's so unromantic in a certain sense. Stampeding them off cliffs.
Yeah. And
wow.
The problem is, of course, there's only so much buffalo meat you can take when you've got the whole bloody herd lying there in pieces.
So
and there's only what?
So you're telling me they that the Native Americans themselves were responsible for the buffalo, running them to the brink of extinction. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all, because there weren't enough Native Americans to make that much of a difference.
Oh.
Even when they ran whole herds off.
Okay.
No, it was the white man that drove the buffalo to extinction. There's no doubt about that. And that was done very much as a matter of policy. But the truth is that after the Plains Indians got horses, they became much more selective hunters of buffalo, much more careful, because they could afford to be. When they didn't have horses, they were kind of stuck doing whatever they could. So, in a sense, the buffalo profited by the Indians getting the horse. But there was nothing like the systematic program of wiping them out that the white man did.
Yeah.
I mean, that's also a true story.
Yeah.
You've got to understand that it's not as though anybody comes out of this looking 100% wonderful. Nobody ever does in history. You've got to admit the terrible fact that at any given time, everybody's got blood on their hands. Everybody's got dirt under their fingers. Everybody's got, anyway, you get the idea.
Okay. Well, what does Blessed Karl of Austria? What did the Austrians do? How did they have dirt on their fingers?
Well, they tolerated the rest of the world. Next.
Okay.
See, I can be just as partisan as any Native American studies teacher who doesn't know a single Indian language.
Wow. Intellectually dishonest about Austria. Wow.
Yeah, but I'm willing to say it.
Oh my!
People are willing to come out and say, "I have a particular bête noire, and that's it." And if you don't like it, tough. No, they'll pretend. I don't pretend. I'll tell you the truth. But no, seriously, I'll just say though, to finish up the Native American thing. Yeah. Most people know about the Aztec hearts and all that kind of thing, the human sacrifices and the sort of anthill society the Inca perfected in Latin America and in Peru rather. So the point I'm making is that the difference between the European empires and the Native American empires, and yes, they had them. We had one in North America that collapsed around the time the Roman Empire did. The so-called mound builders. We don't know why it collapsed, but it did.
Wow.
And it didn't do so nicely. The sad truth of the matter is that in both the old world and the new, there was horror, bloodshed, and rapine on a constant level. The difference was that the old world had the light of Christ to bring to the new. The new world did not have that. They had turkeys, they had tomatoes, they had potatoes, peanuts, they had popcorn, they had all kinds of good stuff, material things. Okay. But nothing like the light of Christ, the chance of salvation.
Okay.
So what else you got for me?
Next question is from Kale. He asks, what do people mean when they say Franciscan spirituality or Dominican spirituality or Jesuit spirituality, etc.? Aren't all of these orders part of the same faith? Shouldn't there just be one Catholic spirituality? The Eastern Orthodox have seemingly achieved this unity. Is this something that should be sought, or is diversity in practice a good thing?
Well, firstly, every order has a different style, a different spirit, and there really is no unanimity amongst the Orthodox. Only with them it tends to be more along geographical lines. Serbian Orthodoxy is rather from Romanian Orthodoxy, Bulgarian Orthodoxy from Russian Orthodoxy, in style, in manner of devotion, in all sorts of things. With the different orders, they have, and of course also in Orthodoxy there's a big difference between monastic spirituality and lay spirituality, for obvious reasons, as there is with Catholics.
Yeah.
And then again, as I'm talking to you, there's a lot of difference between Russian monasticism and Athonite, that is, on Mount Athos monasticism. And so it goes. Mind you, there's a lot in common with all of these different things too. but they're sufficiently different that you can give them names. And so too with Franciscan, Dominican, Jesuit. They have different spiritual writers, different saints they're devoted to. They all believe the same faith, but the style and spirit is somewhat different. But again, as with Orthodoxy, not so much different as to be different religions.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's funny we just got this question yesterday. I was going to actually do a solo video, because some people wanted me to do solo videos. So I was actually going to do a solo video talking about Franciscan spirituality specifically. Because to me, they each have their emphases.
Yes, I mean, that's exactly right.
I used to actually, I don't want to take too long because, again, I could talk about this for 40 minutes or so. But, obviously Franciscan emphasis is charity. You look at the St. Francis prayer, and there it is right there. It's about giving. Whereas Jesuit spirituality is more bound up in chivalry. You want to find, discover Jesuit spirituality, then you read Spiritual Exercises of St. Ignatius, the book. And as Solange Hertz points out, because Solange Hertz talks about masculine and feminine spirituality. Those are two different things, masculine and feminine spirituality. Men and women have different spiritualities. They have different approaches.
That's very true.
And she makes the brilliant point that there's a reason why the Jesuits don't have sisters in their order. It's because it's a masculine spirituality. It's bound up in chivalry. It's bound up in warriors. And this is not something that appeals to women as much. My mom read Spiritual Exercises of St. Ignatius, and it just wasn't her cup of tea. I read it, and I was like, oh, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this. This is life-changing. So, I mean, it goes to show you that, even Carmelites have their own little, because their focus is what? The little way, and it's like a step-by-step gradual process, like in interior castle, the different rooms in the mansion.
And Dominicans are much more about the intellect, and all that kind of thing.
I asked, because I actually didn't know the Dominican, I'm not as familiar, but I asked a seminarian, and they're about, because their order of preachers, right? So they're about preaching and telling the truth and the intellectual approach.
And mind you, there's just as in the East, there's room for all these different national foci, but it's all the same faith. And the question then is such diversity good? And the answer is, yeah, sure. I mean, so long as it keeps in mind the totality. In other words, well, there's an old saying in the church that comes to us from, I think, St. Vincent of Lerins, which is a little island in the south, off the south of France. He was a very well-known monastic, but he said, in essentials, unity; in non-essentials, liberty; in all things, charity.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of hard to improve upon.
Yeah.
But what else we got? We hit the hour.
The last thing I'd just like to say on spirituality is, we have to identify as Catholics more. I mean, there's, you ask a person, what's your favorite TV shows? What's your favorite movies? What's your favorite music? And they'll be able to list them, and that's part of their identity. Like, I don't know what to come up with, but I think, Catholics, should be able to say, what's your favorite spirituality? They should examine this and be like, oh yeah, I'm a huge Carmelite fan, or I'm a huge ICKSP fan, or, whatever. That needs to be fused in our identity more, as Catholics.
I believe you're right.
We can't just simply define ourselves on secular terms and on our likes and dislikes.
No, I think you're right.
All right. Next question is from Christopher Dittmar. He says, is it constitutionally permissible for a member of the Catholic clergy to serve as President of the United States?
It is constitutionally permissible, but it is not canonically permissible. Pope John Paul II basically forbade clerics to serve in political roles unless they got special permission from the Holy See. Now, mind you, in the not-so-distant past, you had countries like Austria and Slovakia and several other places where priests did in fact serve as heads of government. But that's no longer the case.
Okay. Just writing these questions down. Okay. Next question is from Ron Davis. Dear Charles, you have repeatedly stated your admiration for Blessed Karl of Austria. My high school history teacher recently mocked the idea he is a saint, since he authorized the Austria army to use poison gas. Can you give examples of his correct actions in governing and explain the gas decision?
Well, firstly, much as I enjoy mocking high school teachers, I'm going to have to start with yours. Actually, he forbade the Austrian army to use poison gas. Your teacher is wrong. Now, mind you, he swallowed a very common lie, and I suppose he can't be expected to check things out for himself. Doubtless it came from a source, secondary or tertiary, that he trusted. But he's wrong. One of the things cited during the investigation of his sainthood was how he conducted the war. Not only did he forbid the use of poison gas, although of course he couldn't control his German allies, they used it. And when the Germans came to reinforce the Austrians on the Italian front, they used it there. But he had no control over them. He forbade the Austrian Navy. And by the way, the American army used poison gas. So I guess we're not going to be canonizing Woodrow Wilson anytime soon. He also forbade the Austrian Navy to torpedo civilian shipping. Something the American Navy did. So I guess Woodrow Wilson won't be canonized for that reason either. He was the only one of the major war leaders to attempt to bring about peace. He was the only one who greeted Benedict the 15th's peace plan with acceptance. He attempted to negotiate a separate peace with the Allies, but rather than doing anything with it, they just used it by exposing him as to do this. They threw Austria completely in the hands of the Germans. If the emperor had had his way, the war would have ended a year earlier than it did. Think of the millions of lives that would have been spared. But fortunately, people like Clemenceau and Wilson had their way, and the beat went on, yada, yada, yada. Let me see. What more can I say? He did the first social welfare ministry, a government ministry, in the world. He used the imperial carriages to bring provisions to the starving poor. And of course, Woodrow Wilson, that great saint, basically told the Germans and the Austrians, you have to get rid of your monarchs or we'll starve you. Which, as Winston Churchill, not noted for his pro-German or pro-Austrian stances, Winston Churchill said, in so doing, Wilson opened up the way for Hitler and Stalin. So I guess there should probably be a statue of Wilson at Auschwitz and another in front of the tomb of Lenin in Red Square. You might share those with your high school teacher if he wants to be mocked.
So, I mean, somebody just fabricated out of thin air that they use poison gas.
Well, what happened was that poison gas was used on the Italian front against the Italians, but it was used later on by the Germans, over whom the Austrians had no control. The Austrians were fighting side by side with the Germans, but the Germans did not take orders from the Austrians. Okay. The Austrian troops did not use gas. They never did.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I can see how that lie could happen then.
It's a beautiful lie. It's spread by beautiful liars.
Yes. Okay.
But I have one prayer for people who believe that sort of thing. May they never meet the Emperor Karl in the next life. No, I don't mean that.
Whoa.
I don't mean that.
Whoa.
Let's put that another way. may their feelings in this life never keep them from meeting him in the next.
Okay, there. That's nicer. Okay.
And I try to be nice.
Yeah. That's good.
Well, anyway, go ahead. What's next?
Next question is from Michael Cooney.
Yes, sir.
I would like to hear Charles's take on the 3 days of darkness prophecies showing up in various YouTube videos of late. Specifically, have the saints named as prophesiers of this event actually spoken on it? If so, exactly what have they prophesied regarding it? Finally, how do such prophecies fit or not into current events, especially considering Christ's admonition against trying to speculate about such things?
Well, I'll start with the first. No man knows the day nor the hour. I have heard about the 3 days of darkness for years. I can't tell you anything about them. All I can say is that I've heard them ascribed to all sorts of people. I don't know their origin. I can tell you that from what I've heard, during those 3 days of darkness, you're supposed to basically lock the doors, lock the windows, and hide under the bed. People have been doing that in LA for the last 3 decades. I really, I don't know. And I'd be foolish trying to pretend I know anything about it.
I mean, I've known a lot of old people who really were into, that whole thing.
Me too.
And here's the thing. Now they're dead. And no, I mean, what did the 3 days of darkness get them? Everybody's waiting for these prophecies, but then it never had any relevance in their life. See,
well, let me take you, and again, this is what touching on. We've done this before. Let me take you to a prophecy that's definite. Doesn't mention the 3 days of darkness, but it's definite, and that.
Sorry, you're cutting out. We okay?
Can you hear me? Are we better?
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Not to worry. Let's look at a prophecy that did not mention the 3 days of darkness, but was very definite about things. That's Our Lady of Fatima. Now, she was very clear in what heaven wanted. Say the rosary, do the duties of your state in life, devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. She was very clear. All right, but she gave a prophecy, which was that if people didn't straighten up and fly right, while that war, World War I, would end, another and worse would break out in the reign of Pope Pius XI. Now, Benedict XV was Pope then.
Okay.
That would not be until 1922. And the other and worse war did, in fact, break out in the reign of Pius XI, but the last year of his reign, 1939. So if, upon hearing his coming to the pontificate, you had said, "Oh, my heavens, Pius XI, it's time to hide out in the hills, gang," you would have spent all that time tucked away with nothing to show for it. Whereas, what you really should have gotten out of it is to say the rosary, fulfill the duties of your state in life, be devoted to the Immaculate Heart, do the Saturdays, the first Saturdays, etc., etc. That is what you should have gotten out of it. But people are funny. They will look to these prophecies not for what they require out of us, but in hope of figuring out.
Wait, can you say that again? Figuring out what?
The future.
Oh, figuring out the future.
The future.
Yeah.
The problem is that you might as well use tea leaves. Because one thing you know about prophecies from past experience is that when they're fulfilled, you can only tell about them in retrospect.
Right, like Anne Catherine Emmerich, I'm told that she predicted 2 popes at the same time.
Yeah, and we have them, I suppose.
yeah.
And she predicted also that there would be black boxes in every house in which Satan would speak.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that one too.
Well, imagine that you're a little nun from 19th century watching Game of Thrones.
Right.
Not that I'm bagging on Game of Thrones. I mean, I can sing the Reigns of Castamere with the best of them. That's not my point.
Yeah.
The point is that what comes out of our television is, and even good chunks of Game of Thrones, just so you know, is filth.
Yeah.
And for a nun from that time to see this in the future, and presumably with no narration or explanation, you can imagine why she would presume that that was hell speaking directly. Well, as far as the 3 days of darkness go, you'd be better off focusing on whatever the given seer said you should be doing to avoid that fate. And if it'll happen.
Yeah.
And again, some of our listeners might say, well, and I'm making this out of my head, but St. Dominic predicted the 3 days of darkness in his revelation of 1247, and he said then that unless people said the rosary, went to Mass regularly, and kept the fast days, this would happen. Well, okay. You should probably focus on doing that part of
it. Yeah.
And let the 3 days, if they're going to come, take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Focus on what the prophets say we should be doing, as opposed to what will happen if we don't.
Right.
And that way you can be assured you'll be doing your part of trying to fend it off.
My approach to prophecy, it's like one of my favorite memes where, I don't know if you've seen it, Charles, where there's a skeleton typing at a keyboard and it says like waiting for Pope Francis to answer the dubia, and you see this guy, he withered away at his keyboard.
Well, I can see it. I had a friend, who was a big fan of Bayside.
Right, yeah.
And apparently Veronica Lucas predicted that a comet was going to come by the Earth and suck out all the air, and she gave a particular date. And I said, well, if the atmosphere is sucked off, what are you going to do? She says, oh, well, we're supposed to keep our windows and doors closed.
Okay.
That's what I said. Okay. So I made him a wager, and the wager was, he gave a very specific date this was going to happen on. I said, if it doesn't happen, you'll take Steve here, your brother, Steve, to the Pierpont Inn, which is a establishment in Ventura, for dinner.
A nice place.
A very nice place. But the comet came, or didn't. We're still here. And he didn't ever take us to the Pierpont Inn.
Wow.
To be fair, when he died, his son took us. And said it was the estate fulfilling the father's debt.
There we go. The debt is paid. You got to do. Yeah, I mean, you got to do that.
What a meal that was. Thinking about that on a Friday is unwise. What else we got?
All right. Next question is from Heinrich Mueller. Charles, what is your view on Nostradamus, and do you see him as a valid seer?
Well, he certainly got Orson Welles one of his last jobs, so that's something. Orson Welles, one of his very last things was to narrate a documentary about Nostradamus. That's why I'm saying.
Okay.
This. I didn't just come out with this out of absolute nothing. I don't know. Some of his prophecies, like the one about the flight of King Louis XVI to Varennes, seem pretty clear. But the problem with them, and don't ask me to explain how he might have foreseen any of this, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the problem with his quatrains, as they're called, is that they really only make sense in retrospect. As I've just been saying, the flight to Varennes, there's seemingly a very clear thing. It even mentions the two names of the people who turned the king in. But that wouldn't have done the king any good. beforehand because they're couched in such bizarre language.
Yeah.
They make no sense until after.
Wow.
So.
Okay.
Was he really seeing the future? I don't know.
All right, that's it for our set questions. Time for a shameless plug once again, because it's that time. Sean Leslie's Ghost Book.
Who wrote the foreword?
Oh, it's you.
Oh.
I see that. Forward by Charles Coulombe. So, incredible book. There's a lot of cool ghost stories in the book. It sort of is neat how it talks about ghosts that seek out the sacraments in different ways. And then, but so you have a lot of cool stories like that. And then after that, you kind of have, some scary ghost stories. And then after that, you have the last ghost story, the final ghost story.
It's just the kind of thing you want for Halloween.
And that final ghost story, you will remember for the rest of your life. So, it's a book that leaves an imprint on one. So, all right, time for chat questions. We've got, looks like so far 5. I'm just going to be asking, for the sake of time, I'm just going to be asking questions from people who submit donations. All right, first question. Will the end of Roe v. Wade really end abortion?
In some places, if Roe v. Wade ended tomorrow, all the states where it was illegal when Roe v. Wade passed, it would be illegal again. All the states where it was legal, like California, where we never saw an abortion we didn't like, we even elected them as governor.
Yeah.
That wasn't nice. Anyway. Well, what? Anyway, we would still have abortion in California. Yes. They'd still have it in New York. They'd have it in Massachusetts. But in states like, I don't know, Texas, Nebraska, Ohio, wherever it was illegal in 1972, it would be legal again. Now, what would then happen is that immediately that occurred, Planned Parenthood and their various minions and hangers-on and dopes would go to war in whichever states have changed sufficiently since then to try to bring it in. Now, there's some states like Texas and Georgia, for instance, that have probably not changed sufficiently to bring abortion back.
Yeah.
But there are other states where it'll be a tough fight, and then states where it's become a sacrament to the moronic, where infanticide has become a religion, like our own California. We'll still be bathing in the blood of infants. Don't you fret about that.
I think a really nice byproduct, if it was ended and then it was up to the states, is that people would get, well, at least have more incentive, even more incentive or opportunity to get involved. Because one of the things I don't like is everybody's just sort of watching the game play out on the federal level, on the centralized level, and so no one really does anything because everything seems beyond their scope to help. But then when it's on the state level, it's like, well, you kind of can make that much more of a difference now.
Well, and then the onus drops down. I mean, and then presumably, if it was back in the hands of people as opposed to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was staring in adoration at their high mightinesses. Mr. Justice Anthony Kennedy.
Yes.
I missed him in my car. No. Anyway, the point is, I swerved at the last minute. The point is that that would make state politics certainly more interesting. I mean, now somebody can say they're pro-life on the state level and cash in on all the votes.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
And if you said it, okay, well, that's great. So if we send you to the state house, you're going to fight abortion, right? And for the Mexicans in California and Texas and New Mexico, the Hispanics, this would kind of put them on the spot.
Yeah.
Because right now, you've got the excuse, well, I can vote Democratic anyway because it doesn't matter whether they're pro or anti-abortion.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of good could happen by getting people more active on the state level. I mean, honestly, I think the only reason that we have 3 genders in California is because this active minority of crazies. Because
it's true.
The liberal crazies control everything, and everybody else. I'd love to see a poll of how many people in California are aware that there are now 3 genders in California.
I
would love to see it. I bet it's a tiny fraction. And I bet if people were actually aware, that it would not have happened.
Well, but see, the problem is we go back to the California State Court, which is like the Supremes in Washington. I mean, you've got to remember the ruling class here are morons. Now, they don't pay most of the taxes. Those are the people we're trying to drive out. This Proposition 10, for instance, in the next election. Mm-hmm. If you want to see the state economy collapse, you vote for 10. That'll do it.
Which one's 10?
10 is the one pushing rent control.
Mm. Yeah, I know. The homeowners one. The homeowners one. Yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
Well, what's going to happen if it should pass is that people are going to stop building rental property, and they're going to stop making repairs on rental property. Whoops. It'll be like New York, where if you live in a rent-controlled building and you want to repair anything, you've got to pay for it yourself. I know it's not going to put any money into the building. Why would he? Okay. He's not going to get any profit out of it. So, anyway, what else we got?
Sorry, folks at home. I don't know why. Whoops. Lost you for a second. Let me just... All right, there we go. Okay. Let's see here. Next question. By Todd Bird. What is the surest and safest canonical protection for traditional mass community in an unfriendly diocese against being suppressed or kicked out?
Get a canon lawyer and have a lot of money. And actually, if you send, the more money you send to the diocese, the less likely they are to play with you.
Okay.
So my advice to you is, if you're worried about your bishop kicking you out, just give him lots of money so he'll realize he's shooting the goose with the golden eggs.
Yeah. Yeah, money talks. All right. Next question. Charles, can you tell us the story of how you were granted the Order of Saint Sylvester? How does one attain this honor? Now, we can't answer this question. We're going to leave it in mystery. But this person gave a sizable donation, so I felt compelled to ask. We'll just leave it a mystery, right? It's.
I'm afraid I can't say.
We can't say.
It was left on my doorstep. Say, my name is Sylvester. Protect me.
Okay. Next question is from Liturgia Fanatica. What's the history of the Index of Forbidden Books? Can Catholics read them today, and how should they go about it? Why isn't Karl Marx on there? Hello.
Well, it goes back to the Middle Ages, back when the church were concerned about what people were going to read. Interestingly, students could always read them with permission. There was never any trouble about getting it. Interestingly enough, various theologians were put on it. The Three Musketeers was put on the index because of the insulting way it dealt with Cardinal Richelieu. It was thought to hold up. A churchman to ridicule and abuse. The last edition of it was in 1958. As I say, if you could show a reason for wanting to read something on the index, it was never difficult to get permission for it. But these are books that were considered to be injurious to one's faith if one was not sufficiently instructed. Why was Karl Marx not on the index? I don't know. I have no idea what governed their choices. except to say that probably anyone who was keen on reading Karl Marx wouldn't have cared if it was on the index.
That's interesting. That's true.
But beyond that, it was abolished in, after Vatican II. Catholics are no longer bound by it. But it certainly is a good way to see books that are dangerous. I mean, if you don't think you've got a strong grasp on your faith, don't read them. And if you don't think the person you might want to give a book to has a strong grasp on their faith, don't give them anything on the index.
Yeah.
Don't give them to your kids to read. Because considering the proportion of them that are in Latin, I think your kids might be safe from a lot of them.
All right. Next question, potentially last question, from Patty McGill.
Ah, well, don't you know? Patty McGill of the little people.
Did non-Catholic elements conspire with Muslims in Spain? Can I justify the Alhambra decree as a purging of malevolent people? God bless Columbus. What's the Alhambra decree? Decree, excuse me.
It means the expulsion of the Jews from Spain.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well, here's the thing. When the Muslims ran Spain, they used the Jews as tax collectors and sort of intermediaries between themselves and the subject Christian population. As you might imagine, when the Moors were finally driven out of Spain, this led to a great deal of resentment. Now, the 1492 was when Granada and the Alhambra were conquered by Ferdinand and Isabella. Bear in mind what was going on at the same time. The Ottoman Turks in the Mediterranean were expanding. The Barbary pirates were seizing whole villages as far away as Iceland and Ireland and selling them into slavery. The Spanish, on the one hand, were deathly afraid that the Jews would somehow communicate with the Ottomans and welcome back a Muslim yoke into Spain. And as a result, they often took things in their own hands. And there were all sorts of unpleasantries, kind of like we saw in the Balkans back in the 90s.
I see.
So, Isabella took the hard decision of expelling the Jews who did not convert to the Ottoman Empire. And so that was why you had until 1948, you had in Morocco and Algeria and Tunisia and Libya and the Balkans and Turkey, you had large communities of Spanish-descended Jews whose ancestors had been expelled by Isabella and went to those places where they were received with open arms. In fact, in 1992, the anniversary of the expulsion was celebrated in Turkey, in Istanbul and Izmir, the two major cities where their descendants are today in Turkey. This was seen as a great thing. Did she do the right thing? Well, it depends upon the degree to which there might have been communication between the Ottoman Turk and members of the Jewish community. Now, of course, the argument could be made that if such communication existed, it was on the part of the Jews self-defense. And certainly, they did better under the Muslims than they did under the Christians. So you've got kind of a catch-22 going. There was also the fact that it seemed better to Isabella that they be safe amongst the Ottoman Turks than, shall we say, open to her subjects' sometimes unreasoning rage. Okay. So that was how that happened. That's why Ladino, which is the Hispanic equivalent of Yiddish, what Yiddish is to German, Ladino is Spanish, that is antique form. That's why that language exists today, and why spoken or was spoken until recently in North Africa, on the Balkans, and Turkey.
I see.
So there you go.
Okay, we have one last minute question. Thank you for your donation, John Ziemba. He asks, Jay Dyer, an internet pundit of religion and media, converted from Catholicism to Orthodoxy and has spent a lot of time refuting Catholicism. Have you any mind to answer him?
I think the patriarchs of Moscow and Constantinople are doing a good job all on their own. They don't need me to help them.
Are you familiar with this person?
Yeah, I think he's a Facebook friend.
Oh, okay. People in the chat seem to fancy him a conspiracy theorist. Is that what you would classify him as?
I don't know. Frankly, I don't follow him closely enough to give a proper answer.
Okay, so
I mean, no, I've had occasional dealings with him down through the years, which have never been unpleasant. But I can't pretend to know him. In the sense, I can't pretend to know him. I don't mean to say as in the sense of I know not the man. Don't you put me in with him. But I mean in the sense of not knowing him well enough to comment intelligently
right.
upon what he's said or done.
Okay, I understand.
In other words, if there's a failing here, it's not Jay Dyer, it's me.
Right. Okay.
I mean, for all I know, he might be the most brilliant person since my mother, but I couldn't tell you.
Okay, so that'll do it for this episode. Again, we're at the one show a month level for now. So I guess around this time next month we'll be doing the show. If you'd like us to do this twice monthly, get on Patreon, get our level up to $500. And we'll be doing this twice a month. Regardless, when Charles gets home for Christmas, we'll be doing a bunch. It sounds like we'll be doing a bunch of these. So until then, any last words, Charles?
Yeah, stay sane inside insanity. As I believe it was Columbia warned Meatloaf in Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's all going cray-cray. It's madness, ladies and gentlemen. But you know what? Accept it. Relax. There's nothing you can do about it except pray, which is a very important thing. You shouldn't get crazy. You shouldn't be insulting. Because sometimes, I'm quoting Thomas Paine, I'd much rather quote Rocky Horror than Thomas Paine. That line, these are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot shall not long endure. I hate Thomas Paine. But,
okay.
That's a phrase that is nevertheless very true. It's madness out there, absolute madness. And the way we can avoid contributing to the madness is by not joining it. Not going insane. One of the variations on the whole zombie Walking Dead mythos is the notion of a disease that doesn't kill people and have them die and come back, but just turns them into ravening monsters, but they're alive. You see, I think 20 weeks ago or something was that. Yeah, well, you know what I'm speaking of.
Yeah, no, I abide by that metaphor. I mean, that's the metaphor I use for our current situation, is The Walking Dead.
And it's a powerful one. We have to avoid going mad.
Right. I mean, that connects to what I was saying before. We recognize, as trads, we recognize everything that's bad. We recognize threats, sort of like in The Walking Dead. But the problem is finding the balance. Like, in The Walking Dead, you recognize threats so much, suddenly you're kill on sight. You don't trust other people because you don't want the risk. And see, that's the definition of trads right there. I mean, sometimes we cross things off because we don't want the risk. You see even people cross off, Saint Faustina and saints because it's like, well,
Padre Pio.
Padre Pio, even.
And the other thing is too for our Orthodox friends. Same.
Yeah.
Don't let the current friction drive you crazy.
Yeah.
Above all, ladies and gentlemen, remember to try to govern your personal relationships, whether on or off the internet, by Christ's teachings. He did the proud and nasty will inherit the earth. That's really not one of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the proud and nasty, for they'll run the show. You won't find that in the Bible.
Yeah.
And all of us, myself included, not you and your penthouse high atop the building, but all of us have to be on guard against those things. So pray, use the sacraments, use your devotions, take pleasure in the things, take big things where the big things to be taken pleasure of. I mean, go trick-or-treating with your kids. Watch a Christmas parade or a Thanksgiving parade. See the fireworks on the 4th of July, even if, like myself, you're a Tory true and blue. Just relax. There are plenty of people out there going nuts for all of us. They're doing it for us. We don't need to join in.
Yeah. Are you gonna miss Halloween this year, Charles? Are you gonna tell me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm not really terribly homesick, to be brutally frank. I mean, but the biggest thing I will miss is Halloween.
Because your ritual is the pumpkin carving, right? That's your thing.
The pumpkin carving,
yeah.
And the little notes asking the trick-or-treaters to pray for the repose of the souls of my relations and friends.
That's so hardcore and cool. I just love that.
Well, those little notes, they turn trick-or-treating back into souling, which was,
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that, because that reminds me, we have, for anyone who wants more Halloween content, we've done some pretty cool Halloween specials the past 2 years. So, talk about werewolves, Sasquatches, and all that, dragons, all that fun stuff. So if you want more, off the menu Halloween content, we have it. We have some years prior.
It's funny. It's probably too late this year, but I'm thinking Tumbler House could come out with little pre-made "Please pray for our dead" notices. Suitable for putting in with the candy.
We don't get a lot of trick-or-treaters in our area. We kind of have a dark street, and I don't know where they go trick-or-treating over here. But
well, I think the electrified fences saying all trespassers will be shot dead might be kind of a discouragement. Seeing Tyrone and the guards running around with those Doberman.
It's somewhat a deterrent. Somewhat of a deterrent.
Yeah, I think that might discourage all but the hardiest trick-or-treaters. I remember the year the whole secretarial pool came as themselves. It was really frightening.
Oh, man.
The commissary served pumpkin pie made out of fish. They assured me that it was going to taste like the real thing. I didn't believe them, and I was right, by the way, just in case you were curious. It tasted like fish pie, kind of elderly fish pie. Fish that had grown old in virtue, if not in taste.
I thought, I was so happy because I thought we were going to be able to go through an episode without a nasty fish reference in this one, but we didn't quite make it. We didn't quite make it in this one.
The memory, I have to admit, the memory of those lunches just prior to the air. Little do the audience know the condition my stomach would be in. Because, when we started, it meant mackerel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what mackerel means? It's been around for a while.
Yeah.
That fish been around the block, is what I'm saying. Hey, it's. I know it is. When you get fish, it's so meunier.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen. It's we managed to go over an hour and a half, so that's an improvement from last time.
Yes, we're doing better. So, everyone in chat, thank you for stopping by. I hope everyone enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.
And remember, happy Halloween. The trick-or-treater you asked to pray for your family's soul may be the trick-or-treater whose soul you saved.
What the hell? Okay.
That was pretty convoluted.
That was pretty convoluted, but...
I think it sort of made sense. It made sense, kind of.
Yep. All right, see you next